A world powered by the blockchain is being formed right in front of our eyes. Experts are calling it the Internet 3.0, the next digital revolution. It's leaving many investors and even institutions looking for a path to take an early position in this massive opportunity. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Dash, it's all speculation at this point. But what is certain is that the most profitable businesses for cryptocurrency and the blockchain is in the actual creation of these coins. This is why some of the top early adopters of Bitcoin, blockchain miners, fund managers, and even billionaires have come together to create a new vehicle to invest in the blockchain core itself. Get immediate access to this new company by going to crushthestreet.com/Bitcoin.
Hello everyone and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, but more importantly, I got Ben Perrin on the line from BTC Sessions, brand new guest here at Crush the Street, and I'm looking forward to picking his brain and discussing the current events in the markets. Took a little break here at Crush from some of our videos. I was in Florida, went to the North American Bitcoin conference in Miami, had a great time there. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back into these interviews. But without any further ado, Ben, thanks for coming on Crush with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I've been a long-time listener of the show.
Well, hey, Ben, you struck while the iron is hot when it comes to cryptocurrency. Congratulations on that. You started your channel and you've completely blown up. So congratulations on that. If by way of introduction, if you would, please tell everyone how you got into cryptocurrency, what attracted you to it, and why you're doing what you do today.
Yeah, so I first started seeing things about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in 2013. So I view myself as a bit of a latecomer, to tell you the truth. But I noticed it a couple times in early 2013. I saw a couple articles, and as most people do, just kind of dismissed it, didn't really think much. And I have to be honest, initially it was those jumps in price that caught my eye, because I think the first time I saw it, it was Bitcoin was around $13 or something like that, and I didn't really pay much attention. And then a few months later, I saw it at 100 and something, and I thought, I missed the boat on that one, whoops. And then again, paid no mind until the explosion at the end of 2013, when it went up over 1,000, 1,200, 1,300. And at that point, I kind of wondered, okay, well, is this legitimate? Is there something there? Is it a massive bubble? And I started reading, and there wasn't a ton of easily accessible information at the time, but I sifted through everything that I could. As when Andreas started making videos, that was a massive help. But I probably spent about 3 months just reading before I ever bought any Bitcoin. And I just started experimenting with, $50 at a time, playing around, learning how to use wallets, things like that. And the end of 2014, I had obviously fallen completely down the rabbit hole. Started talking about it on social media a little bit. Ended up seeing a competition where you could essentially be paid to try and live on Bitcoin for a month, and I ended up winning that competition and getting paid to live on Bitcoin for a month through a company that was essentially offering a matching service between people who wanted to spend Bitcoin and people who wanted to buy it, and would buy things online for you in exchange for it. So I did that, and then it was I rode out the 2014 and early 2015 bear market, and I was fine with it because I was comfortable with my understanding of the technology, and nothing had really changed other than the price. So I kind of viewed it as a bit of a discount, and then I just continued in mid 2016. I just decided, and you know what, like I would find it incredibly helpful if there were some bare bones basic tutorials on things like, how do I safely start a wallet? How do I secure Bitcoin and cryptocurrency? How do I send from place to place across multiple different platforms instead of just a single wallet explanation? And, you know, other applications that were coming out and Bitcoin debit cards and things like that. I thought people could probably use some basic knowledge because it was very difficult to find at the time. And so I just started making videos. I told myself, okay, I'll make one a week and just see what happens. And it started up slowly. You know, I remember getting to 100 subscribers and being pretty excited. And then by the beginning of 2017, that's when I first broke 1,000 subscribers. And I was pretty excited because I had like 50,000 views on all my content. And as of now, it's something like 1.7 million views with 26,000 subscribers. So it's gone much better than I anticipated, and it's fun because you know, I get to actually correspond with people from around the world. I get to do these interesting interviews, talk with people like you know, head of Open Bazaar, Shapeshift, all these different companies get to do interviews. It's great, and everybody in the community is so fun to engage with that I'm really glad that I decided to start up the channel.
Yes. Well, hey, again, congratulations. You run an amazing channel. You're an easy guy to watch and follow, and you're doing a great job there. Now, one thing that I wanted to point out that I heard you talk about was you actually had to go through a period of time where you were buying while prices were going down. It wasn't the 2017 bull market where all you had to do was throw money up in the air and the wind will just send it higher, right? But yeah, just talk a little bit about that if you would, and just maybe your thoughts on where we are today as you've seen this market evolve.
Yeah. So at the time, I started reading about Bitcoin, and I didn't just read about all the positives. I also read about, you know, what could possibly negatively affect Bitcoin. You know, what should I be aware of as far as threats to the system? And so I felt like I had a pretty broad knowledge of what was going on. And I mean, 2014 for Bitcoiners was a rough year. You know, we were coming down off all-time highs, and it was essentially a steady downward slope of about 80% over the course of the year. I think that's the correct figure. But I remember getting in, I think the first Bitcoins I was buying was in the $800 or $900 range, and I watched it go all the way down to $200 or just below at the beginning of 2015. But I also remember getting paychecks in January 2015 and going, maybe I'll buy a whole Bitcoin today, and buying them for $200. And so when people come to me now and say, are you freaking out because the price crashed? No, I'm not, because I mean, I was fortunate enough to see this early, but I went on a little bit of a Twitter rant the other day because that's a common response when people ask if I freak out over the price when it drops, and I say no. They typically say, well, I mean, you're in a different position than most people because you got in early. Well, yeah, but why am I in that position? I got in at a time where I watched it solidly go down for an entire year. And I very much think that I'm lucky enough to be in the position that I am now because I took the time to do the reading and research to understand where I was putting my money. And I feel like my knowledge of the subject was very much correlated with how much of my money I was comfortable to put into it. And so, you know, a lot of people that maybe dove in this past December when it was peaking around 20K, and the only reason they bought is because they saw the price going up. Well, what do you think is going to be the reaction when the price is going down? They're going to sell because that was their only indicator of what to do. So, you know, I always try to say to people, you know, I'm not going to tell you whether or not to buy, but you should look into the technology and try and understand as much as you can, and then make that call for yourself.
You know, I often wonder how many of the early adopters in cryptocurrency, mainly Bitcoin, actually made millions of dollars. I mean, these were the tech guys putting in the blood, the sweat, and the tears, and largely, in many cases, maybe even living off the crypto, spending the crypto that they made because, you know, that's what they were doing. They weren't in a position to necessarily hodl because that's what they were working on, and that was their income. And I guess also you have the fact that many of these people at some point were up 10x, and human nature is to sell when you're up that much. I mean, 10x is a big return. And, you know, there's some people we know that were sitting on huge gains. I mean, they're looking at their portfolios going, wow, this is absolutely amazing. And, you know, I'm one of those people, and I don't say that to be braggadocious about it. I sat on it, and, you know, I've sold some, but I'm largely happy. But, you know, there's a tendency, there's a human nature to want to sell gains, especially a 10x gain, much less a 100x gain. And I'm just wondering, how many people do you think actually sat on just these monstrous gains all through the ups and downs to actually have something largely to show for it here in 2018?
Well, I mean, I guess I can only really speak to my own reaction to the market this past year, but yeah, I mean, it can be tempting, and, you know, from time to time, if I really, you know, needed some money or wanted to pay off a little bit of, you know, any debt that I may have had, then that was nice to be able to do. But at the same time, having rode out that previous bear market, and now selling when it's anything but an all-time high is in my mind, it's very painful. Like, I really don't like doing it. And I think that may differ for some other people, but people also get greedy too. You know, when you see it blasting through the roof, there's a tendency to think, well, it's gonna double from here and triple from here. But there are always pullbacks, right? There's always going to be a pullback in the market, and that's when I try to fall back on, okay, why did I get into this? Did I get into this for like a quick buck, or did I get into this for potentially life-changing returns? Do I think this is going to, you know, deep in my subconscious, do I think this is going to be around in 10 to 20 years? And if so, what do I think it's going to be worth then? And if I don't think that, why am I holding it in the first place? So I really try to keep that mentality of I'm in this for the long haul, and it can be very tough to grapple with that. Oh, I'm sitting on this much money, and if I were to take some of that out, look at all the fancy things I could get. But yeah, I you know, I'm now comfortable. I now am working in the space too, so I have put even more of my conviction, I guess you could say I put even more of my money where my mouth is, because that's where my time and my career are now. So, yeah, I think that will very much differ depending on how you entered the space and how much you understood the technology before entering the space, I suppose. But yeah, it can be a difficult, fickle thing when you're sitting there looking at gains, wondering whether or not to do something with them.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think And I guess, too, and I think a lot of people see people that were in the early days of cryptocurrency, and they assume that they're 100 millionaires now because they had Litecoin when it was 8 cents or something like that. But I think the reality is there's not as many of those people as you might think. You look at the chart and you would assume that, but human nature takes over. And, you know, you look at the guy who had to do the first transaction for the Bitcoin or the 2 pizzas, right? You know, it's like, oh, you know, poor him. But I mean, that was the pioneer. This was the guy building the infrastructure for what we have today. That was needed. That had to have been done for us to have what we have today. So in some ways, I give these people credit for building out the road for what we have today.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you think of people like Andreas Antonopoulos, so I don't know if you're familiar with what recently happened with Andreas, but I mean, anybody who's listening who doesn't know, check out Andreas Antonopoulos. He's one of the best and most prolific speakers in the entire space. Just an incredible understanding of the technology, not to mention an incredible knack for being able to break things down in the simplest of terms so that anybody can understand what he's talking about. He really caters to his audience. But I mean, he's been traveling the world speaking about Bitcoin for years now, and people just assumed, well, by now he's got to be a Bitcoin millionaire. And he came out recently and said, well, contrary to popular belief, I'm not a Bitcoin millionaire because I went into a lot of debt to pursue my passion, and anything that I've earned, I've had to spend to survive and to support my family at home in Greece. And he took some flack from it was actually from Roger Ver that said, well, had you just invested a little bit of this way back in this year, then you would have been a millionaire by now. So that would have been irresponsible. And the community did not take to that comment too much. And so what they ended up doing is donating to Andreas, essentially overnight making him a Bitcoin millionaire, which was probably one of the best feel-good stories of the year for me in the space. I was so happy to see this guy who's just been pretty much doing a public service for the space the entire time, not making that much money in the process because he's supporting a family back home that needs support. And then the community turns around and I think gives him exactly what he deserved, because he has guided so many people into a better understanding of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general. And I very much look up to him.
Yeah, that's a real world example of just the giving principle. Somebody who gave and gave and gave, and because the people around him have received so much value from his work, it all came back in such a big way. And I mean, that's just, I believe in that principle. The giving principle is just so powerful in life. And I mean, it's just in every success book, the Proverbs, anywhere you look, the giving principle is just so powerful and transcends anything we want to talk about today. But yeah, that is a very cool story. All right, Ben. Well, hey, I'm looking at my experience at the Miami Bitcoin conference, and it was crazy. I mean, it was euphoria. There were cars being sold for Bitcoin. It was Lamborghinis. Some might say that there was a lot of greed, and just a lot of scamming going on at the event. I'm not going to say that, but I mean, you can almost assume that was what was going on to some degree. But one thing I will say, and this is what I was thinking in my head, and that is, when you have that much money circling a space, that's going to attract talent. Money attracts talent. And you got to wonder what sort of technologies are going to be birthed out of this environment where there's a lot of money to be made. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are here as we go into 2018 in just the blockchain space and the decentralized platforms in general.
Yeah, it's funny because there's so much innovation to come. When you look at cryptocurrency in general, and even over just the past few years, I mean, when I first started playing around with the stuff, I pretty much had to download a full node onto my computer to be sending Bitcoin around. Eventually, there were some mobile wallets, but I had an iPhone, and Apple had just banned all of the Bitcoin wallets on the iOS Apple Store, and so, you know, I switched over to Android just to be able to use any of these wallets. And now, you know, how many different apps are there, not only for multiple cryptocurrencies, but for tracking trades, for trading live on your phone, for managing your Bitcoin debit or Bitcoin Visa card. It's the growth is unreal, and just the usability. And to be honest, it's still not even there yet. It's still, you know, to a regular person, it's still so foreign. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. Namely, what I'm interested in is seeing great UI or great user interfaces, because it's once it looks like, you know, somebody sending a text message or swiping to send an email, that's when it becomes very, very accessible to everybody. And it's getting closer, but I think that's one area that needs to be worked on. And then easy spendability, easy accessibility to buy and trade. All of these things have gotten so much better, but are still on their way. And then beyond that, what other use cases are we going to see for this kind of stuff? I would argue that we haven't yet seen the first use case that everybody is touting come to fruition, which is a stable, easily transferable money. And I think that's actually going to take quite some time, because, I mean, with market caps still this small, it's easy for these things to be super volatile. And so I think eventually, when you get a market cap that's large enough, that's the same size as you know, a Western country's market cap of their money, then you'll see it less easily manipulated and less volatile. You won't be worried about losing all your money or losing half your money over the course of a month. But at the same time, once it gets to that point, it's no longer going to be an investment. It's going to be just your money. So it's going to be interesting to see how this progresses. I'm very excited. Namely, what I've been following lately is the Lightning Network on Bitcoin. Transaction fees have been quite expensive this past year. We've seen them come down a ridiculous amount this past week and a half, 2 weeks. It's now back to where it was a couple of years ago. But I'm really excited for the Lightning Network and what it enables, and the growth of it this past little bit has been absolutely insane. It just exploded. It's just a spider web of all these connections across the globe. And it kind of flies in the face of those that were saying, oh, this is vaporware. It's not going to exist. It's never going to happen. Well, it's here and it's happening. And I'm excited to see mobile wallets that you can use. It's just around the corner. And yeah, it's really exciting to see. It brings me back to when I first got into Bitcoin. Discovering all the stuff about these second layer solutions is really, really getting my imagination going. So I think there's a lot of innovation to come. That being said, market-wise, I think it could be an interesting year, because I don't know whether we're sitting at the beginning of another 2014, where we have a pretty solid pullback through the year, or whether there's too much interest, whether we've hit that point of no return where there's just going to be ridiculous amounts of money flowing in over the course of the year. Neither would surprise me at this point. I've learned not to be surprised by anything Bitcoin or cryptocurrency does. But yeah, if Bitcoin has a huge pullback, I think everything will have a huge pullback. But I guess it remains to be seen. It's most everything's looking a little red lately, and that's fine, because I find when people aren't 100% focused on price, that's when infrastructure gets built up and usability just becomes so much better. And for me, that's when I'm buying, when it's down and people are more focused on the technology and building the infrastructure.
Ben, one of the things that was a big topic at the conference this year, people pointed to the fact that 2017 was largely the year for utility tokens built on the Ethereum platform. Mm-hmm. And 2018, it looks like it's going to be the year of securities tokens, tokenizing equity, directly with the way you would with a stock. And we have Polymath and T0 working on these sorts of on-ramps. And I'm just wondering, I mean, have you looked into this at all? Do you think that we're going to see a massive shakeup in the traditional equity world?
I would very much love to see that. The thing with having things like equities blockchain-based, if that becomes the standard, then it's much easier to audit what is going on in the background. It becomes much more transparent. You can make it as transparent as you want to be. And if the standard becomes fully transparent, then you'll start asking questions as to why certain companies do not make it transparent. You would think that if that becomes a standard, that anybody not practicing that would be scrutinized quite a bit, and it just, I think, will add further legitimacy to the markets. Right now, I feel like things are too easily manipulated, and you don't really know what's happening in the background. And not only that, but the idea of being able to, as an individual, actually take control, blockchain-based control, with my private keys of the stock that I own, and then freely transfer the stock in whatever company I'm invested in. The idea of being able to freely transfer that anywhere that you like, instead of being tied to your one online trading account, or however you decide to invest through your bank or whatever. I love the idea of a tokenized security, because then you can, as an individual, and I know that maybe laws will prohibit this initially, but I think we're leaning towards individuals just being able to hold their tokenized stock wherever they like in cold storage, and then transfer that peer-to-peer. And I think that opens up a lot of possibility. Yes, I'm very excited to see that.
All right, Ben. Well, hey, I appreciate your time here at Crush the Street. We're going to see, I think, a very dynamic 2018. If people want to learn more about what you do, please let them know where they can go and what they will find when they visit you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pretty active on Twitter, so you can find me at BTC Benny. And my channel on YouTube is called BTC Sessions, and there you will find a variety of videos, very bare bones tutorials about wallets, proper security, various applications, and it is Bitcoin centric. I do dive into some altcoin talk from here time to time, but a lot of the lessons learned through most of my videos, even if they are Bitcoin centric, can then be applied applied to most other cryptocurrencies as well. So BTC Sessions on YouTube is where you can hit me up. You can also follow me on Steemit, which I've started posting a lot of stuff there. It's a decentralized social media platform where your upvotes are actually monetized, and that is steemit.com, and you can find me at BENPERRIN 117 on Steemit.